presentation is with Simon Hanna from Friend MTS. And Simon is the Regional Vice President of EMEA for the company. And the presentation is about effective protection for premium live sports on a global scale.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So it's a reasonably short, sharp session today. We have in the order of 20-odd minutes, hopefully to give you a bit of a primer, a bit of a quick starter on the piracy problem and really what we can do about it, what we do about it. My name is Simon Hanna, Friend MTS. We are, well, we would say we're a security company, but that's a very broad term. We're an anti-piracy services company primarily, which means we focus on the anti-piracy space. It's really our specialty. We're not a DRM company. We're not a conditional access company. We are specifically around the anti-piracy problem. And again, as we go through this, it will give you some better feeling for what that actually means. Okay, so first of all, I mean, throw some numbers at you. It's always difficult in the world of premium sports piracy to work out how big is the problem. I mean, this is a big number. It's one of the few numbers that are available, specifically relating to premium sports. What's obvious, though, this is a big number. This one says $28.3 billion annually. It's a multi-billion-dollar problem, and in really anybody's language, that's significant. Next slide. So when we talk about that number, though, it's very much not a victimless crime as well. There is always a mentality with piracy that really a problem is I'm just taking it from someone who can afford it. It's not just, obviously, content owners, it's the broadcasters, it's the platform operators. It pervades through the whole ecosystem, plus, of course, ultimately to athletes, to clubs, to everyone who works in the space. Now, here's another number, 74%. Well, supposedly, some research indicates that around 51% of sports viewers do actually watch illegal sports streams. It's quite a precise number, 51%, but it's a significant proportion. But associated with that is this idea that if we can actually disrupt their access to these pirated streams, up to 74%, around 3/4 of those viewers would actually switch to legal alternatives. Now, there is the view that these people would never pay for legitimate services anyway. Legitimate services are too expensive. Actually, this research contradicts that. The majority actually do want sport, and if they can't get pirated sport, they will actually pay for legitimate sports content. One thing we always have to do when we talk to customers is, we get into conversations about return on investment, and if we spend money on anti-piracy measures, how much money will it save me? How much of a difference will it make? And it's always a very difficult conversation because the results are often visible retrospectively. You apply measures, you see what happens, and you say, yes, actually, this did make a difference to us. But then, how much evidence is there out there? How many stories are there? How much factual information is available in the public domain? Not a lot, frankly, but we do know from 2019, I think it was, with the Premier League, they worked with a range of broadcasters. They blocked in the order of 200,000 plus pirate streams. And consequently, for the remainder of that season, Sky Sports in the UK saw a fairly marked uptick in the number of subscribers and the volume of viewership on the remaining Premier League matches. So that was a clear example where the piracy disruption did make a difference. I think it was almost a doubling of the viewer numbers for the remainder of the season. Additionally, that $28.3 billion we talked about, the projections are that will be heading towards $50 billion within a couple of years. And allied with this percentage of people who would switch, if you could only get 1 in 4 of those viewers back into the legal domain, you are looking at a $10 billion plus annual revenue recovery. Therefore, is it worth doing? Absolutely, it's worth doing. There is serious money to be saved here. Next slide, please. So what is this piracy all about? Is it just about hooky websites, rubbish content, badly encoded, with malware and pornography advertising and all sorts? Well, that might have been the situation a number of years ago. Pirates have moved on. Pirates are commercial operations. Pirates are making a lot of money. In some instances, pirate websites are almost indistinguishable from legitimate TV services. Some paying pirate consumers claim they don't actually know it's a pirate site. They didn't realize. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but certainly we've seen some pretty convincing efforts at a TV service being put together by pirates. And that's because these are businesses. They're making money out of this. They've got paid employees. They're using the tools that the legitimate service providers are using. And that's not just from front-end and UX. They're using the same infrastructure providers, the same hosting providers, the same CDN vendors in some cases. So they are building proper TV services. It's just they're using stolen content. We talk here about the payment systems. They may be using PayPal or other payment systems. They may be taking credit cards. The advertising sometimes they're carrying is actually legitimate paid advertising. The advertisers may or may not know that they're on pirate services, but this is generating money for these pirate operations. Social media as well, of course, is a big area for pirate services. It's not just closed subscription services, putting out every linear channel, sports channel available in the world for $25 a month. A lot of piracy we see on social media, particularly in the Asian market. Social media is a big issue. But there is also a split where a lot of the paid piracy is IPTV services, a lot of the casual piracy ends up on social media. Particularly if there's a big boxing pay-per-view fight, you'll see somebody who's paid 20 quid to Sky or BT Sport for the fight. They'll say, well, I paid for this, I'm going to put it on Facebook. So they get the camera out, they just cam it, it appears on Facebook. It's easy to do, and people will do it, and they do it in potentially hundreds of thousands of streams going up to a big fight. So it's a major issue for the social media platforms themselves. And again, if you don't want to pay for it, there are lots of places where you can find the content. Next slide, please. So what can we do about it? Well, first of all, we need to understand what is it the pirates are doing, how are they getting this content. Also then we need an awareness of, well, we say the roles, responsibilities, and motivations of all the different players in the ecosystem. So all the legitimate companies, you're not all the same. You have different responsibilities, and again, different motivations, because it may be your content, it may be content you're licensing. How seriously you treat the problem will change accordingly. Also, how much you're paying for the content matters as well, and how much you think you're losing from the piracy. And then what can we do about it? How do we stop it? So we'll give some insight into the tools, technologies, the mechanisms that people like ourselves make available to actually try to make a difference to this problem. Next, please. So first of all, there's a slide we call glass to glass and beyond, just to try to set the scene. What we're showing here really is content going from left to right. Far left we have, in a live sports scenario, cameras in the stadium. Football match, boxing, any sport you like. Live cameras, content's being captured. It's going through the whole production chain, broadcast operations center, network operations center, distributed out to a range of partners throughout the world, licensees and broadcasters, going through the operator platforms and service providers, ultimately to a screen, an end device, whether it's a big screen or a mobile phone, a desktop player for playback into the eyeball. So that's glass to glass. There is security through that whole chain. There has to be security through that whole chain, whether it's physical security in the stadium. In the past we see feeds of live camera feeds with presenters talking in the break that are out in the pirate domain because it's not being secured and you have a rogue employee. So we have zero trust environments. We have in head ends, locked cabinets, lots of physical security measures. Then we get onto the distribution piece. We have conditional access, we have DRM. These are fairly well-worn terms, but they're absolutely essential. Going through ideally a hardened client that can't be tampered with. Now the point with conditional access and DRM, for instance, if you are not encrypting your content for distribution, you're effectively putting it out free to air. Or if it's badly configured or misconfigured, your content's going out free to air. Now pirates will always go for the easy option. And free to air content is zero cost access. So all a pirate has to do in that case is point their potentially paying subscriber at the content that you're not securely distributing, at which point you as the service provider are paying the pirate's distribution costs. Particularly in an OTT environment where you've got a CDN bill, every pirate consumer who consumes that content, you're paying for it. So again, that's the easy option for the pirate. But what's this and beyond piece? So if you do secure that delivery from glass to glass, and the pirates are not able to access an open door, what do? Well, at that point we get into what we call restreaming piracy, which is the big issue for much of the commercial piracy these days. And it's really what we spend a lot of our time trying to counter. And restreaming piracy is around capturing from a device, putting it out on the internet, capturing, re-encoding, putting it out on the internet. At least you're making the pirate do something. At least you're making the pirate invest some effort and some cost to make that content available. Can we next slide, please? So this is what we talk about here, restreaming. It's capture and onward distribution. So what does that mean? How do you capture content? It's not hard, I'm afraid. That's the bad news. People think, well, we have lots of protective measures. We have, on HDMI outputs, we have HDCP. Surely people can't just capture from an HDMI output. The sad truth is $5 for an HDMI splitter will remove the HDCP, back into your PC, re-encode up to the internet. That's not hard to do. Pirates generally like something with an HDMI output. So the favorite devices for pirates tend to be Roku players, Fire TV sticks, Android TV boxes, Android boxes, anything with an HDMI output, or legitimate set-top boxes with a paid subscription. It favors dense form factor and low power and low maintenance. So you can get a stack of 16 Roku boxes all tuned to a different linear channel, each with an HDMI output going into a dense encoder, about this big, about this big. At which point, you're looking at one power supply, one corner of a room with a whole TV service, well, all the premium sports channels for a major TV service being ripped off for very little effort, very little maintenance, very little air conditioning. And click again. The alternative that we see also in a commercial sense is the idea of desktop screen scraping. So if you have a web player, a desktop player, anything with a desktop, get a big 4K screen, play HD content in one corner with your web player. You just use free tools like Open Broadcaster or any of the many game streaming tools that you get for Twitch streaming to capture that video real time, re-encode it real time, and again up to the internet. We do see this. It's not quite as favored as HDMI because if you want to do 16 channels, you're going to need 16 laptops and 16 screens, which costs more money, more effort, more space. But again, you can't stop it. Doesn't matter how much money you've spent on your CA or how much money you've spent on your DRM, you cannot stop people doing this in a real world sense. So we have to then counter that restreaming problem. So next, please. Just a quick bit on the different players and the responsibilities. Okay. The media world is not, in the sports rights world, it's not just everyone's a content owner. That's not the case, and everyone's a broadcaster. We have a range of different players. Content owners, broadcasters, platform operators, service providers, and a blend of all three potentially. But it starts at the top with the rights owners. Ultimately, you have a global rights owner, a global content owner. Some examples here. These are big brands, big names. Some of them are smaller, but these are some of the ones we work with: Premier League, UEFA, the two of our biggest customers. They have the global copyright for the content. But by and large, they don't own the end subscriber, the person who's paying to watch the content. But that's where it starts with the rights owner at the top generally sets the tone for the requirements for the protection of the content. If they don't care, no one else downstream is going to care. So the rights owner then distributes to a range of licensees, broadcasters. In America, we call them programmers, channel providers. It's a whole host of different parties in different countries. Examples here again, some of our customers. Sky Sports as a channel broadcaster, BT Sport as a channel broadcaster, Nova Sports in Greece, beIN Sports in the Middle East, who have suffered quite a lot from piracy in recent years, and they've been very vocal about it. But they license content, so they'll license Premier League, they'll license UEFA matches, La Liga, all this content bundled together in linear channels, and those channels are being stolen by pirates. Pirates like to steal channels. They don't just steal a Premier League match, they'll take Sky Sports 24 hours a day. Those channels themselves, if we click, are then played out through a range of operators. This is really the traditional three-tier model of content owners to broadcasters to platform operators. Now, the platform operator in this case could be Sky Sports playing on Sky Satellite or Sky's Now TV, or BT Sport playing on BT TV or on Sky. There is crossover there. In some cases we get, obviously Sky Sports goes out on Sky, also goes out on Virgin Media Cable in the UK. So there are situations where you have an aggregated broadcaster operator, and places where someone is just an operator. If you look at Virgin Media, they don't own the channels, they don't own the Sky Sports channels, they just license those channels, they pay to carry those channels. So their motivation is slightly, and their capabilities are slightly different from Sky as a satellite operator, because Sky are more invested in the actual ownership of the channels themselves as an organization. Virgin, though, they would say, great, we've got these channels, what can we do about it? Well, they own the end subscriber, who ultimately is responsible for restreaming the content. So they do have a responsibility to help protect the content, but potentially they might not be as motivated as someone who actually owns the channels themselves. So it's a nuance, it's a subtle difference in what we see when we talk to different parties. If we click, we also then, particularly in the OTT space, we see more overlap. A couple of examples, Viaplay or Prime Video, licensing Premier League content. They are OTT providers, they license the content, but they are both the broadcaster and the service provider, the operator. And we click again. We have more complete end-to-end examples. Formula One, yes, they license to channel providers such as Sky, and they're licensed to all over the world to hundreds of different parties, but they also have a D2C service called Formula One TV, where they are the content owner and the broadcaster and the platform operator. So they both own the content and they own the end subscriber. And that makes it different into what they care about, but also what they can actually do and the tools that they can employ. Okay, next one. So what are the tools then? What can we do about this? How do we stop this problem? So there are a range of things we do. First of all, I would say it starts with monitoring. We talk about global monitoring and legal enforcement. The keys there, it's got to be global. There's no good just looking at your local scene. You just have to understand what's out there, where is the content being made available. That doesn't always tell you how many people are viewing the content, but there is a general truism that the more widely distributed the content is, the more people are probably going to be watching it. If it's available in 1 million places, that means there's interest. Legal enforcement, what's that about? Well, legal enforcement in this sense is about ultimately notice sending, takedown notice sending, DMCA notices, cease and desist notifications to the pirate entities and then their infrastructure vendors behind them. Is it effective? It can be effective. Is it 100% effective? Absolutely not. Because a lot of these are paid pirate services who are there to make money, and they do not respond generally to a please stop it notification. But you have to do it. If you don't do it and you ever want to prosecute an individual, the first thing the judge will say is, did you tell them to stop? Yes, we did. Here are the 5,000 notices we sent to them, all ignored. So that's monitoring and legal enforcement. Again, underpins everything you then build on top. What can you do on top of that to actually get a more positive, stronger result? And the services we'll talk about here are what we call dynamic real-time delivery server blocking, which is a bit of a mouthful, but it's about blocking access to servers for wannabe pirate consumers who want access to content. We're not allowing them to get access to that content. Subscriber level forensic watermarking. You know, if server blocking is a relative sledgehammer, watermarking is a bit more of a pointy knife to find out the source of the pirated content, who's stealing it in the first place, and do something about those guys. And they're different mechanisms, but they're both dramatically more effective than just simple notice sending. And together, we would say they all form part of this overall end-to-end content security system. So we go glass to glass, all the security throughout that chain, and then these anti-piracy measures on the right-hand side to make this complete suite of security methodologies. Next slide, please. So when we look at monitoring, reasonably complex picture, but really what it's showing is on the left-hand side, we have our original content. That content is made available to a number of licensees and then distributed through a range of networks, operator platforms, through cable, OTT, range of devices. In this case, the pirates are capturing that content for restreaming, so they're not able to access any leak or any insecure content. They're capturing it, they're restreaming it into pirate infrastructure, and then we have a whole range of pirate viewers looking at this content. Click, please. What we then do is, as a monitoring provider, we research where these pirate services are, we understand where we are, and when there's a particular event on or content we care about, we will find that content, we will capture that content. Click, please. And we use a technology we call video fingerprinting to be able to really create a digital signature of the original content and match that up against the digital signature of the pirate content we've captured to automatically and at massive scale determine that this is the content we care about. So that's what monitoring does. Again, built on that, then we have legal enforcement, which is the sending of takedown notices. And again, it's global monitoring. When there's major events on, like Premier League matches, we're capturing literally thousands of streams simultaneously from around the globe. Next, please. So building on that monitoring, as well as being able to send these notices, what can we do above? And we have this idea of dynamic real-time delivery server blocking. A service we pioneered about 5 years ago with the Premier League in the UK, and now in Ireland as well. Service we also offer for UEFA. And it's a network-level enforcement mechanism. Again, it's a relative sledgehammer approach. What we're doing here is through a legal order in the local jurisdiction, the ISPs are receiving the IP addresses of the video delivery infrastructure that's serving the pirate content on a real-time basis during an event, and are blocking any attempts to access that content by their ISP subscribers. So if you're a broadband subscriber on, pick your favorite ISP, if it's a major ISP in the UK, when the Premier League match is on and you're trying to get to a pirate service, the ISP will say, sorry, you can't have this because it's on this block list. And again, the difference between this and just legacy website blocking or domain blocking is this focuses on the video delivery servers at an IP level. We're not bothered about the front-end websites, we're actually looking at the delivery servers. And we block tens of thousands of servers during major events. And it's been a hugely effective implementation that we've been running for a number of years now. And this is, I would say right now, this is really one of the hot topics globally for a lot of our potential customers. Next, please. This really just a quick picture to illustrate it. On the left-hand side, we have that reference fingerprint generation for the signature of the source content. In the middle, we have a global monitoring service, which is capturing from pirate services. We use fingerprinting real-time of that captured content to match up against the back-end reference database, and it determines, without having to look at the video, that this is the stuff we care about, we're being paid to protect. We get all the, what we call the network forensics of the capture, so where is the video being served from, where is it being made available from at an IP level, and those IP addresses they're filtered, they're sanitized, there's quite a lot of work done with those IP addresses, and then they're passed through in real time. Every few minutes they update for the ISPs, and the ISPs then will access that list and update their block list during the event. And then on the right-hand side, broadband subscriber who's trying to access this particular IP address is getting the sorry, can't have it message. Okay. Next, please. Next then we have watermarking. I appreciate we only have a couple of minutes left now, but again, watermarking is the different approach where instead of trying to block access to the content, we're trying to work out where it's being stolen from in the first place. So which legitimate subscriber, which Sky subscriber or BT subscriber or Viaplay subscriber is accessing Premier League content through their legitimate subscription, ripping it off and putting it up to the internet. The idea being, rather than worrying about taking out all these pirate services with takedown notices, if we can cut off their source of content, they will simply be playing out a "you are not subscribed" message because that subscriber has been cut off. So in this case, content is played, quick click please. Content is played across the distribution networks into the set-top boxes of the OTT players. A watermark is put in at the subscriber level, and that means that any content that is then restreamed has that watermark built in, burnt in, and then when we monitor for the pirate content, we are aware that that content that we've captured should be watermarked, at which point we do an additional operation to extract the watermark. And click please. And we feed then back to the operator to tell the operator that this particular payload is currently restreaming live on the internet. The operator can turn that into a subscriber ID, take access then to remove the entitlement to the content, and take whatever action they're obliged to take against their subscriber. That's subscriber level identification in a nutshell. We also have the idea of distribution watermarking, which is more of a network level, so you can distinguish between a feed that went to Virgin Media versus a feed that went to Deutsche Telekom versus a feed that went to Vodafone in Ireland, to give you some better intelligence about really where most of the problems are happening. That's a different application of the same technology. But watermarking itself, it's a very broad subject, certainly more detail than we can get into today, but there's a range of phrases, buzzwords, descriptions for watermarking, AB variant, client composited, bitstream modification. If anybody wants more detail, absolutely happy to go into depth with you. But it's a key technology, and it's something we've deployed in tens of millions of devices around Europe. Again, our biggest customer for this is Sky. So really anyone who's trying to steal Sky Sports now, that content's watermarked, and we will find it, and Sky will take action against you. That's what they do. So, and click. So yeah, again, the final step on the animation was we find it, we tell the operator cuts off the subscriber. So, and again, and again. And one thing I would say about watermarking, people think, well, what does this mean? Well, legacy watermarking, we talk about covert versus overt watermarking. Overt watermarks are the old style of things like broadcaster IDs, where you pop up a smart card ID on the screen for a few seconds, things you can actually see. Modern watermarking was often known as forensic watermarking. You can't see it. again, the key requirements here that we've summarized. As a viewer, you can't see it. It's always on. So whenever we capture content, whether it's 3 in the morning or 3 in the afternoon, it's going to have a watermark in there. We're not trying to time it for a particular point in time when we think it will pop up. We've got to be able to pull that out from a few minutes of video. This is live sports that we deal in here. We're looking at football matches that last 90 minutes, boxing fights, and we want to find someone and take them down within a round of boxing. It's no good if we need to capture 2 hours of content. It's got to be robust. The pirates are after this. They're trying to do things to break what we're doing to find them. And it's got to be able to cover all relevant device categories. So anything with HDMI output, we want to be putting watermarks in there. Anything with a desktop output, we want to be able to put watermarks in there. Ideally, actually, you can put watermarks in anything, but you do prioritize. Commercial piracy tends not to focus on smart TVs because there's no HDMI. You just basically have to cam the screen. There's better ways to capture content. So when we look at watermarking with our customers, we tend to prioritize the devices. Okay, next. And so the final slide then, just to summarize, anti-piracy matters, it makes a difference. It's part of this overall end-to-end security implementation, glass to glass and beyond. Understand what your role is within this ecosystem. If you're a content owner, you don't own end subscribers, you have to provide security guidelines, you have to motivate your licensees, but you are different to those licensees. If you're an operator carrying other people's channels, understand what you can do. You can implement watermarking. You are not doing global monitoring for that content, but there are certain things you can do. And finally, anti-piracy, very much, it's about disruption. If you're not doing anything because you're waiting for a silver bullet that will fix 100% of your problems, you're going to be waiting a long time. But as we said earlier, if we can just convert 1 in 4 of those potential paying subscribers, that's billions and billions of dollars that can be made, and this is what we do in the real world. We deliver real commercial benefit from services that we are delivering at this time. Okay. That's it from me. Pretty much the half hour is up.
Any quick questions?
No. Yeah. Well, we would say we support all scenarios. So in very, very brief summary, legacy set-top boxes, broadcast set-top boxes, we look at embedded solutions there because they don't have internet connectivity. Where we do have connectivity, we take advantage of the network, the internet, to be able to put all the clever stuff in the cloud. And then what we can then implement approaches where we put small SDKs in a client, or which we call a client composited overlay, or an alternative approach which we would call server-side watermarking, where it's done in the head end, and there's various techniques for that to be able to distinguish the streams that are delivered to the end devices. Again, we support all scenarios because we have a range of different customers, a range of different requirements. It's a complex area, but happy to go into more detail if you like.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
It's good.
Okay.